few leaders have that naturally. Because, to grow in a company and to advance in a company, there's tons of assessments being done. We do them, the experts do them, I've done them. A lot of leaderships in C-suite have the 360s done. Yeah. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're aware of that. The information may have been presented to them, but how do you get people to kind of absorb it?
It takes practice, and everyone is not cut out to be a leader, and that's what I see a lot in my work, and I'm sure you do too, that sometimes you have an individual contributor that's doing really well at performing their job, but they're not able to lead people. That's a whole different hat. So this person has to be able to gain insight into themselves, and if they can't, they really need to step out of the leadership role.
I think that's key because my background's in finance, and I had the opportunity to interview a lot of people that were moving up in the leadership program. I was one of their interviewers, and it was always interesting to me because what would happen is somebody would do well in finance or in any sales career, and they're like, oh, they're a great salesperson. Let's put them in leadership. But they were terrible at, it was almost like they were in this little silo. They did well, they executed well, but they weren't good at empowering other people or really listening and being present with other people.
Yes, even in the meetings, you'll see some leaders, they're on their phone, they're constantly being distracted, and they're not listening, as you're saying, and really paying attention.
So with this mindful leadership, if somebody is listening and they want to pay more attention to their employees, their coworkers, their spouse, their children, whatever it is, because that's all leading.
Yes.
How do they start? Like, what is step one? What's your process with people to kind of walk them through?
Well, let's get into a little bit of the neuroscience, which is going to
lead. I love the neuroscience.
But it's going to lead us to meditation because
here we go. We're back to meditation. It's all coming back to meditation here.
And there are many ways to meditate. So if anybody ever tells you there's this one way and that's it, just run. Go the other way.
That surprised me because I was the one going, I can't do this. I can't do this. And as you know, I came off a yoga meditation retreat with our friend Lisa recently, and I would have 3 years ago said there is no way you're going to get me to meditate because I kind of always pictured it as we got to sit crisscross applesauce or whatever we call it now, and our fingers are out like this, but that's really not what it is.
You can do it that way,
you can,
and there's nothing wrong with
to.
that, but you don't have to.
Yeah.
So there is sitting meditation, but there's walking meditation, there's moving meditation, yoga.
There is
ways.
Sitting in a hot bubble bath meditation.
There is, exactly. So there's lots of ways to reach that meditative state, and what happens when you meditate is you change your brain, and that's neuroplasticity. And so when you change your brain in these positive ways, you're better able to regulate your stress. You're a better communicator, a better leader.
How long does it take to, when you say neuroplasticity, I mean, that to me is like it's stretchy and it's molding and it's bending, but how long does it take for that to stick?
Just a few weeks if your practice is consistent.
Okay.
So consistency is key. That's what I tell everyone. A little bit goes a long way. So a lot of people will avoid meditating because they think they have to do it for an hour or even 30 minutes, and you don't. Yeah. Just a few minutes each day goes a long way.
That's doable for most people because, I think to carve out an hour to sit in silence or however you decide to meditate, that's scary for a lot of people. It's very intimidating.
And sometimes I'll suggest to people if they're really scared or just resistant, start off with 2 minutes and then do 2 minutes for a month and then bump it to 3 or 4. Just start small and you'll get there.
So once you do that, is that what you're referring to as you call it the mindful mojo? Like is that just being able to do it over and over again, or is that more of a mindset once you've been able to get there? Does that have to do with meditation, or is it?
No, it's an ongoing process because as human beings, we have different seasons of our lives that impact us differently, and we have fluctuations of consciousness that we need to pay attention to. And so sometimes we've got to go back to our meditation in the afternoon even to say, okay, you know what? I need a reset so that I can walk into this meeting with confidence and capability. Because sometimes by 2 or 3, we're exhausted. We've had so many things happen, but we've got this important meeting that we have to take care of.
Do you ever advise people to, and I hate this word, I'm going to say it, but I hate it because it's overused. And anytime a word starts to get overused, I start to dislike it.
I get it.
There are certain things that trigger us. I don't like the word trigger, but there are certain things that trigger us. People, situations. Do you ever advise your clients and the leaders you're working with to do something specific to help with that or that person? Because I'm thinking of leaders. I have a couple of my coaching clients now that there are certain people on their, in the C-suite that they trigger them. And I know as soon as they go into a meeting with them, they're heightened, their shields up, they're in a really heightened state.
Yeah,
so can they apply that here?
Absolutely. And, you know, I do a whole thing on dealing with difficult people, and who is difficult for me may not be difficult for you,
Right.
Kristen, right?
Right.
And so to each his own. But that self-regulation, going back to that, being able to regulate and say, you know what, I really don't prefer this person's approach, but I'm good. I'm okay.
Yeah.
I can breathe. I can sit here. I can listen. I don't have to get triggered, as you say,
Yeah.
by a personality that's not my preference.
Yeah. I think that's so important to remember because we spend so much time in the work environment, you know, for those people that are working, and that we're trying to change people when really the only thing we have control over. I'm a big control the controllables person. The only thing we have control over is ourselves.
Yeah.
So if we can spend the time doing things like this, and I mean that's a lot of your work is helping people do this because it just doesn't come natural.